The Rolls-Royce stopped directly in front of the small hotel just as the morning sun began spilling across the street, and the man who stepped out made the entire lobby go silent. He was dressed in an immaculate dark suit, surrounded by the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years building a life most people could only dream about. But the moment he saw the older black waiter standing behind the reception desk, his expression changed completely. He walked forward slowly, his eyes filling with tears, and whispered a sentence that made the waiter's hands tremble. "You probably don't remember me, but 22 years ago, you gave me and my sister a meal when nobody else would. If you believe kindness can create second chances and change lives in ways we may never see, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Kindness Corner 2.0. 22 years earlier, Malik Rowan was working the afternoon shift at a modest family hotel on the edge of a busy American city. The hotel was not luxurious, but Malik took pride in his work. At 31 years old, he had already learned that dignity was not determined by the job someone performed. He wore his clean white shirt, dark vest, pressed trousers, and polished shoes every day, treating every guest with the same patience whether they arrived in an expensive car or carried a single worn suitcase. Malik had dreams of opening a small restaurant someday, but life had taught him to move slowly. He was supporting his aging mother, paying rent, and saving whatever little money remained after the bills. One bright afternoon, while Malik was carrying a tray through the hotel dining room, he noticed two children standing outside the glass doors. The older child was a boy of about 10, thin and quiet, with curly dark hair and a faded blue jacket that was much too large for him. Beside him stood his little sister, a 7-year-old girl with braided hair, a purple sweater, and a small backpack held tightly against her chest. They were watching the guests eat. Every few seconds, the little girl glanced toward the plates being carried from the kitchen. Malik had seen hungry people before, but something about the children's faces stopped him. They weren't asking anyone for money. They weren't making noise. They simply stood there, hoping someone might notice them. He walked toward the door and gently asked whether they were all right. The boy introduced himself as Ezra Vale, and his sister was called Leora. Their parents had died the previous year, and after moving between relatives and temporary shelters, they had ended up alone after their last guardian could no longer care for them. That afternoon, they had been walking for hours looking for a community center they had heard might offer assistance. They had not eaten since the previous morning. Malik felt something tighten inside his chest. He knew hotel policy clearly stated that food from the dining room could not be given away without authorization. But he also knew that rules written on paper could never explain the desperation he saw in those children's eyes. He brought them into a quiet corner of the dining room and told them to sit. He went into the kitchen and prepared 2 plates from food that had been left over from the lunch service. He added fresh bread, fruit, vegetables, and 2 glasses of milk. When he placed the meals in front of them, Leora stared at the plate as if she could hardly believe it was hers. Ezra thanked him carefully, trying to sound older than his years. Malik simply smiled and told them they did not need to thank him. He sat nearby while they ate. For the first few minutes, neither child spoke. They were too focused on their food. Then Leora began telling Malik about the picture she carried in her backpack, a drawing of a house with a large tree in front. She said that one day she wanted a house exactly like that. Malik listened as if her dream were the most important thing in the world. Before the children left, Malik wrote down the address of a local community center and gave them enough bus fare to reach it. He also packed 2 sandwiches for the journey. Ezra looked at him for a long moment and promised that one day he would repay him. Malik laughed softly and told him that kindness was not alone. He never expected to see them again. The years passed. Malik eventually became the head dining supervisor at the hotel, but his dream of owning a restaurant remained out of reach. He saved money, lost money, started again, and endured setbacks that would have made many people give up. After his mother passed away, the hotel became more than a workplace. It became the place where Malik had built his entire adult life. He eventually became the manager of the small property, which was renamed the Rowan Street Hotel by a new owner. Malik had little money, but he had something more valuable, a reputation. Employees trusted him. Guests remembered his kindness. He knew the names of regular visitors and always made sure elderly guests had comfortable chairs and families received whatever help the hotel could reasonably provide. Meanwhile, somewhere across the country, Ezra and Leora's lives were changing. The community center had helped them enter a stable foster program. Ezra worked hard in school and developed a talent for technology and business. Leora became passionate about architecture and design. The siblings remained close, carrying the memory of the black waiter who had once fed them when they had nothing. As teenagers, they often talked about Malik. They remembered the clean dining room, the sandwiches wrapped for their journey, and the way he had spoken to them without pity. He had treated them like human beings when they desperately needed to feel seen. Ezra eventually founded a technology company with a small group of friends. It grew faster than anyone expected. Investors became interested. Major contracts followed. By his early 30s, Ezra had become extremely wealthy. But money did not erase the memory of the man who had helped him before he had anything to offer in return. One afternoon, while going through an old box of belongings, Leora found the small piece of paper Malik had given them 22 years earlier. His handwriting was still visible on the faded card. Ezra stared at it for several seconds. He had spent years searching for Malik without success. Now, with the help of a private investigator, he finally learned that Malik was still alive and working at the same hotel where their lives had crossed. Ezra immediately booked a flight. The next morning, a black Rolls-Royce arrived outside the modest hotel. Malik was reviewing the morning schedule when the receptionist suddenly called his name. He stepped toward the entrance and saw the vehicle waiting outside. A sharply dressed man emerged. For a moment, Malik did not recognize him. Then the man smiled through tears. He said his name was Ezra. Malik froze. He looked at the man's face, searching through 22 years of memories. The expensive suit, confident posture, and mature features made it difficult to connect him with the frightened 10-year-old boy from the dining room. Then Ezra mentioned Leora. Malik's eyes widened. The man who had stepped from the Rolls-Royce was the little boy he had fed all those years ago. Ezra walked forward and embraced him. Malik stood stunned before returning the embrace. Ezra told him that the meal Malik had given him and Leora had become one of the most important memories of their childhood. He explained that Malik had not merely fed them. He had reminded them that they mattered. Then Leora stepped from the car. She had become an architect, just as she had dreamed. She carried the same warmth in her eyes that Malik remembered from the little girl who once wanted a house with a big tree. She hugged Malik and cried. Malik tried to hide his own tears, but he couldn't. Ezra then explained why he had come. He had learned that Malik had never been able to open his restaurant. He had also discovered that the hotel was struggling financially and that Malik was still working long hours because he refused to abandon the employees who depended on him. Ezra had purchased the property. Malik stared at him in disbelief. But Ezra wasn't finished. He had created a new restaurant beside the hotel and named it The Second Chance. He wanted Malik to run it. Malik shook his head, overwhelmed. He told Ezra he had only given 2 hungry children a couple of meals. He had never expected anything in return. Ezra smiled and said that was exactly why he deserved the opportunity. The restaurant opened several months later. Malik stood outside on opening morning, looking at the sign above the entrance. The dining room was bright, welcoming, and filled with natural daylight. There were large windows, comfortable wooden tables, and photographs on the walls showing ordinary people helping one another. On the first day, Ezra and Leora sat at a corner table. Malik personally brought them 2 plates. For a moment, he remembered the 2 frightened children standing outside the hotel years ago. Then he smiled. This time, the meal was not given because they were hungry. It was shared because they had become family. The restaurant became successful, but Malik made one rule. Every week, several meals would be provided free to children and families who needed them. He said the restaurant could make money without forgetting why it existed. Years later, people would ask Ezra why he had spent so much money searching for one waiter. His answer never changed. He would say that when he had nothing, Malik gave him something money could never buy, the feeling that someone believed he was worth helping. And that was the lesson Malik had unknowingly carried for 22 years. Kindness does not always return quickly. Sometimes it disappears into another person's life for years. Sometimes you never learn what your smallest good deed became. But somewhere, somehow, a meal can become hope. A few minutes of compassion can become courage. And one ordinary act of kindness can travel through an entire lifetime. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to Kindness Corner 2.0 so more stories of hope and second chances can reach people who need them. Before we end, comment, kindness always comes back, if you believe even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life. Because Malik never expected a Rolls-Royce to return to that hotel. He only saw 2 hungry children. And he chose to help them. 22 years later, the world reminded him that kindness may leave your hands in a moment, but its impact can live in someone's heart for a lifetime.